those songs. We're trying to get more people involved because those of us that have been here for a year, me especially, we're just all worked out.
No, I didn't.
I took December off from this and also 2 weeks off from work, so I had some time where I wasn't doing anything. I woke up and was like, this is what Friday feels like. It really is. I need a rich girlfriend. Yeah, if I could.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Welcome to Sunday Assembly Nashville, guys. We're thrilled that you came out. Beautiful day. So what are we supposed to do? We're supposed to sing a song. We're going to sing a song. So I want everybody to stand up with us, please. Clap along. You may not know it, you may know it, but anyway, it's an opportunity for us to get our rock star on. So, shoot, who doesn't want to do that? You ready to go?
Go, Chris.
I'm an audience member.
Backyard banging on a drum, sitting in a jump pile, laughing at the sun, singing, ah, 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 I just wanna be a rock star.
There's a boy in the backseat singing to the song, playing it on the radio, knowing he's the one singing, ah, 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 I just wanna be a rock star. Singing, ah, 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 I was born to be a rock star.
Oh well.
There's a girl in the treetop looking at the stars, waiting for a touchdown coming in from Mars, thinking, is there anybody out there?
There's a boy picking up her, playing his guitar, searching for the answer, buried in his heart, thinking, ah, 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 is there anybody out there? Singing, ah, 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 is there anybody out there? If there's a meaning, can you show me a sign? The more I look, it just gets harder to find. The world is spinning and I wanna know why.
And we're all getting older, wishing we were young, hanging on the memory of what we could become, singing, ah, 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 I was born to be a rock star.
Singing, ah, 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 I was born to be a rock star. Singing, ah, 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 I was born to be a rock star. If there's a meaning, can you show me a sign? The more I look, it just gets harder to find. The world is spinning and I wanna know why. And maybe we will never figure it out. I got a feeling that the life's all about learning anything is possible now. Take a ticket and get off the line.
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 Take a ticket and get off the line. Sing it. I was born to be a rock star. I was born to be a rock star. Sing it. I was a lot of new faces up here with us. Unnamed Assembly Band today. Greg Falcon is here with me singing today. And that's not the end of it. We've got Katie Burns. The whole Burns clan is going to be singing. So I'm going to introduce Em and Nate Burns. And there's going to, and you saw Alex DeFazio. Olivia DeFazio is going to be playing. Sophia and Christina Campbell. Holy smokes, you guys are in for a treat. So we're going to do this next song. You ready to go?
Yeah.
All right, be sure to sing along with us. We're going to get the chorus started right here. 2, 3, 4. I did it all. I did it all.
Oh, when you take that jump, you don't feel the fall. Oh, when the water rises, you build a wall. Oh, when the crowd screams out, they're screaming your name. Hope if everybody runs, you choose to stay.
Hope that you fall in love and it hurts so bad. The only way you can know is give it all you have. And hope that you don't suffer, take the pain until your moment comes. You'll say, and have a seat. I'm going to welcome up to the stage our host for today. Please give a warm welcome for Mr. Matthew Bond.
All right. Good morning.
Morning.
Welcome to Sunday Assembly. Let me make sure I get all this right. We are a godless congregation that celebrates life. And dancing. Our motto, our mission, if you will, is to live better, to help often, to wonder more. We come together once a month for this community service to strengthen one another and to celebrate this one life that we know we have. Our vision is that there will eventually be a Sunday Assembly in every city, every village, every town that wants one. And who wouldn't? Look at how cute we are. Okay. Let's see. Practical matters. We meet every month on the second Sunday at this time, 10 o'clock. Here at Fondren Hall. I was getting to it, David. Except for next month. I have it all written down. When we will be meeting on the fourth Sunday, March 22nd. Okay? 22. But I'll try to mention that again later. And that information is in the program. In addition, there is child care, thanks to Ashley Stuckey and Lisa Lee, upstairs. And we have a teen group, thanks to Carrie Supika, that meets upstairs at 9:30. So if you missed the teen group this month, you can join me next month. I would also like to mention a brief personal note that this is my one-year anniversary with Sunday Assembly. Melissa and I were out of the country when we began in November of 2013, but we sat in our apartment in Rome and watched the local news coverage. It was like something like this. Well, Biff, there's a new church starting up here in the Bible Belt. It's a church without God. Here's Kellyanne for the whole story. We were so pleased sitting there in our apartment for our friends David and Adam, who were instrumental in getting this off the ground and are still instrumental for getting this off the ground. We came back, we were busy in December. In January, Melissa said, I'm going to go check it out. She came back, she was my scout. And she said, they don't play patty cake every single time. I think it's safe. So in February, we both went, and we've missed very few since. And we don't intend ever to stop coming. And I hope that you all feel the same way. This month's theme, well, February is the month of hearts and roses and Valentine-shaped boxes of chocolates and little Valentine sweets that say, text me, or I heart you. So therefore, it's a great time to talk about death. Woo! Dressed in black. Yesterday was the birth of Charles Dickens, dead. And Laura Ingalls Wilder, dead. This Thursday is the birthday of Charles Darwin, dead. Abraham Lincoln, definitely dead. And 10 days later, we get the birthday of George Washington, the deadest of them all. So, here to read a few poems about death are our own Sharon D. and Chris Terrell.
First reading is 1932 by Linda Pastan. I saw my name in print the other day with 1932 and then a blank, and knew that even now some grassy bank just waited for my grave. And somewhere a gray slab of marble existed already on which the final number would be carved, as if the stone itself were somehow starved for definition. When I went steady in high school years ago, my boyfriend's name was what I tried out, hearing how it fit with mine. Then names of film stars in some hit. My husband was anonymous as rain. There is a number out there, odd or even, that will become familiar to my sons and daughter. They are the living ones I think of now: Peter, Rachel, Stephen. I picture it, 4 integers in a row, 5 or 7, 6 or 2 or 9, a period, silence, an end-stopped line, a hammer poised, delivering its blow.
Roughly figured, this man of moderate habits, this average consumer of the middle class, consumed in the course of his average lifespan just under 500,000 cigarettes, 4,000 fifths of gin, and about a quarter as much vermouth. He drank maybe 100,000 cups of coffee, and counting his parents' share, it cost something like $500,000 to put him through life. How many beasts died to provide him with meat, belt and shoes cannot be certainly said. But anyhow, it is in this way that a man travels through time, leaving behind him a lengthening trail of empty bottles and bones, of broken shoes, frayed collars, and worn out or outgrown diapers and dinner jackets, silk ties and slickers. Given the energy and security thus achieved, he did what? The usual things, of course: the eating, dreaming, drinking, and begetting. And he worked for the money, which was to pay for the eating, etc., which were necessary if he were to go on working for the money, etc. But chiefly, he talked. As the bottles and bones accumulated behind him, the words proceeded steadily from the front of his face as he advanced into the silence and made it verbal. Who can tally the tale of his words? A lifetime would barely suffice for their repetition. If you merely printed all his commas, the result would be a very large volume, and the number of times he said, "Thank you," or "Very little sugar, please," would stagger the imagination. There were also witticisms, platitudes, and statements beginning, "It seems to me," or "As I always say." Consider the courage in all that, and behold the man walking into deep silence with the ectoplastic cartoon balloons of speech proceeding steadily out of the front of his face. The words borne along the breath, which is his spirit, telling the numberless tale of his untold word, which makes the world his apple and forces him to eat.
Perfection Wasted by John Updike. And another regrettable thing about death is the ceasing of your own brand of magic, which took a whole life to develop and market. The quips, the witticisms, the slant adjusted to a few. Those loved ones nearest the lip of the stage, their soft faces blanched in the footlight glow, their laughter close to tears, their tears confused with their diamond earrings, their warm pooled breath in and out with your heartbeat, their response and your performance twinned, the jokes over the phone, the memories packed in the rapid access file, the whole act. Who will do it again? That's it. No one. Imitators and descendants aren't the same.
Now, we will hear a song from Pitch Perfect, performed by Christina Campbell and Olivia DeFazio.
Ray and Scott are playing too.
could you put the podium background on it?
Steve.
Right there. Here?
Oh, she made this?
Yeah.
Elaine, can you tell Steve what you need? You need that podium?
No, we're good.
Okay.
All right. Our speaker today is Associate Professor Elaine Phillips of the Department of Languages, Literature, and Philosophy at Tennessee State University. She's a writer of poetry and fiction, a specialist in 17th and 18th century British literature. She also teaches the modern novel and modern and contemporary poetry, and has recently been doing critical work in fandom and in fan fiction. In other words, she keeps crossing boundaries. She'll be talking about death in the 18th century, especially as it relates to one of British Lit's first novels, Clarissa. Please welcome Professor Phillips.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna have to bring it up.
I can do it.
Oh, okay, thank you. I think this is it.
Good?
Yeah, thank you. All right.
Good.
Yep.
All right.
Okay. In keeping with today's theme, I want to discuss the customs and attitudes surrounding death in 18th century England. And this is not only because it's my area of study, but also because as Americans, we are children of the Enlightenment, which occurred during the 18th century. And many of our institutions and beliefs and values are rooted in this area. Think of it. Our Constitution was written and affirmed and put into practice in 1787. We've made amendments to it, but we have not changed our fundamental governmental structure. So I'm going to talk a little bit about death and funeral practices during the 18th century, and then depictions of death and dying in 18th century literature, and that leads to what is, I consider, one of the most important novels in world literature, Clarissa. Okay, so infant mortality rate in the 18th century was fairly high. It wavered between 20 to 40% of births, and that would have varied depending on good harvests, bad harvests, any particular infectious diseases. Children who survived their first year were still susceptible to deadly diseases as well as accidents. So if you could make it to adolescence, you were pretty much okay. You could probably look forward to a lifespan in your 50s, and we do have records of people who survived into their 70s and 80s. For young men, the main cause of death would have been accidents or war. For young women, it would have been complications during or after childbirth. And death was more prevalent in cities due to overcrowding because it was poor sanitation, poor infrastructure, and the spread of infectious diseases. Death was visible in the 18th century. Most people died at home. So you didn't have the dead and dying occur in a hospice or hospitals. It was at home. Infants were sometimes abandoned and left to die on church doorsteps and street corners. And in fact, the Foundling Hospital was established in London in 1741 because people were getting more and more disturbed at the little bodies of infants that they would see, out there on a morning. Public executions were common, popular form of entertainment, and the bodies of criminals such as pirates and traitors were displayed after death. And if we want to throw in animals, it was not uncommon to see dead dogs or cats in your sewage ditch, or to see a horse drop dead in its traces along a street. So death was unavoidable in life. In some ways, people dealt with death the way that we do. And we sometimes like to think that because people in earlier centuries had more children die at infancy or in their early childhood that somehow they got used to it. They never did. And the truth is that losing a child, whether you are in the 1700s or the 2010s, is still a tragedy. And we have records of parents mourning and just falling apart over the grief of losing a child at 3 or 10 or whatever age. Even stillborn children receive church funerals and burials. So, and funerals served an important function. They allowed families to display their grief and to demonstrate their love and respect for the dead, as well as their status in the community. So while the 18th century, the 1700s, might not have had the same cult of death like the Victorians did, they laid the groundwork for that. And they started the expectations and rituals for how to commemorate the dead in modern Western culture. Believe it or not, funerals were a big business in the 18th century. They were an established, thriving business. The earliest advertisements from an undertaker date from the 1680s. At the beginning of the 18th century, the reign of Queen Anne, which went from 1702 to 1714, you had undertakers responsible for furnishing the coffin, the pals or cloth for draping the coffin, additional fabric for draping the walls of the viewing room. You had them providing the shrouds for burying the dead, and all sorts of mourning clothes, accessories, and mementos for the funeral party. They also provided grim-looking funeral invitations, and that's figure one. And these had skeletons, hourglasses, and other emblems of death and mortality on them. You saw that, you knew you were not going to a picnic. One interesting aspect of death rituals was that all people in England during the 18th century were supposed to be buried in wool. And this dated from a law from the reign of Charles II, which wanted this done in order to stimulate the national wool trade. So no matter how rich you were or how poor you were, you got buried in white wool, and the quality depended on your wealth. The funerals of upper class people were also often held in the evening. They were not daytime events. And so you had to have wax candles provided for the procession and the mourning party. So that was another expense undertakers took care of. This originated in the 17th century because Scottish lords wanted to escape the control exercised by the English College of Arms. The College of Arms was in charge of the heraldry and coats of arms granted to the aristocracy and gentry, and they had the crown's permission to regulate aristocratic funerals. So Scottish aristocrats who followed the Stuarts into England got more and more annoyed at the increasing micromanaging and cost, and they rebelled by conducting funerals at night, and that way they could get around the College of Arms rules. But this then became something fashionable to do. So over time, into the 18th century, it wasn't just angry Scottish peers, it was all English, upper class, and aristocratic funerals. Now, you not only had nighttime funerals becoming chic, but they also were dangerous. Upper class funerals had a lot of expensive items on display, such as silver trim on the coffin and cart, plumes on the horses and the equipage, expensive silk velvet hangings, all the mourning rings and gloves and jewelry of the mourners. So highwaymen and thieves were attracted to these processions. And while royal funeral corteges were surrounded by guards, many aristocratic and upper class processions were not, so an evening funeral could be a risky business. And that is one reason why fewer upper class women began to attend funerals during the 18th century. It was a concern for their safety. And there was also the belief that women were the more emotional sex, that they would just disrupt the funeral proceedings with excessive grief and emotionality, you know, that kind of stuff. But what's interesting is that this whole practice was divided along religious lines. If you were a member of the Church of England and you were an upper class or aristocratic woman, the odds are you would not attend the funeral out of delicacy, propriety, and safety reasons. But there were plenty of dissenting women, Roman Catholics, Quakers, Methodists, Baptists, who were like, I'm going to my best friend's funeral. I'm going to my mother's funeral. Danger be damned. And, not all Anglican women hid away in the house, but it was a common thing to do. So despite that, women still had an important role to play in the customs of death. Midwives were hired to wash the dead bodies, and in families too poor for that, that was a female relative's job. Women sat in vigil while the body lay in state for viewing. Women were responsible for putting together and distributing favors for the funeral party. And these could range from something very simple, like sprigs of rosemary for remembrance. You tie it with a little black ribbon and hand it out to the mourners, to more elaborate items like mourning rings and gloves, or personal items of the dead bequeathed to close relatives and friends. So that'd be a classic case of, it's like, well, you know, she always wanted you to have this locket, so here it is. Women were also responsible for providing the post-funeral feast and drink when everybody came back from the burial. And this is an important part of the 18th century death ritual, the idea of some kind of memento. I've already mentioned the gloves and scarves and mourning rings. And these could range from fine kid gloves, elaborate silver rings, to simple silver-plated ones, and says figure 2. So that would be your little, you know, memento from your friend or relative's funeral. And you can see that there's lots of the deceased hair who it's for, also very common gifts to mourners. So you get like a little snippet of hair, and you could put it in a locket or a ring, and larger pieces of hair would be woven into these really beautiful elaborate designs that would be put on brooches or little wall hangings. Mourning jewelry could also be engraved ivory with scripture or sentimental sayings and images associated with death and remembrance. Now, this might seem kind of creepy or disturbing to us. It's like, hey, I went to a funeral and look at my goodie bag. But really, these were really important items to the mourners. It allowed the grieving family to show respect for the guests, and it allowed people to have some kind of memento to remember the deceased by. And in another sneaky way, it was a way for a family to show their generosity and their wealth by what they could give to people. You know, if you could give most of the people in a mourning party black kid gloves and beautiful solid silver mourning rings, you were pretty impressive. 100 years later, around the time of the Regency, the time that we associate with Jane Austen's novels, there were 3 important categories of the death trade. It had branched out. You have your coffin makers who made the coffins and supplied them to the undertakers. And the undertakers did a lot of what they did 100 years earlier, but then you had the funeral furnishers. And the funeral furnishers mutes, basically silent mourners following your procession. There would be the pages who would be also responsible for holding the candles. You'd have your pallbearers. And of course, you'd have the favors for the members of the funeral party. And the funeral furnishers basically took on all the tasks, so the grieving family would not worry about it. In a way, they were like modern funeral directors. And the furnishers would act as middlemen. They would arrange for paying for the tolling of the church bell. They would arrange for the payment of the clergy for conducting the funeral service. So, you know, as I said, it's like what a contemporary funeral director does today, but weirdly enough, I actually like the comparison to a wedding planner. Because weddings in the 18th century, even aristocratic weddings, were fairly low-key. Funerals, they went all out on. So the amount of planning that a wedding planner would do today for someone with a pretty big budget, that's really what the funeral furnishers did in the 18th century. If you were middle class, you stuck to the undertaker, you economized, maybe a little less fabric or poorer quality fabric, maybe a smaller party. They still wanted to put on an impressive show that commemorated the dead and that mimicked upper class customs. And then further down the scale, people made do with either less of the trappings or poorer quality. If you were in the trades, you could participate in burial clubs, where you paid a couple shillings to enroll in the club, and then every week you contribute a little amount. So by the time you died, there was a nice little sum so you could have a decent funeral. In even poorer families where you didn't have the money for clubs like that, members would wash the body. A coffin would be used for transport, but the body would be taken out of it and just put in the ground. And the pallbearers were more than symbolic. You were not going to get a black carriage with black horses and black plumage. Those guys were literally carrying your coffin out to the churchyard. And finally, the truly destitute were buried at the expense of the local government, and they got no kind of ceremony or marker. So you can see that class dictates what kind of funeral you get. When we think about mourning, we often think about mourning clothes, and we think about the Victorians and their very, very strict rules about what you could wear, how long you could wear it. Well, the 18th century had rules like those, even though they were not as rigorous or as long-lasting as the Victorians. So widows were required to wear black. They had a cap that had like little lapels or pieces that would cover the throat, and they would wear a veil, and they were supposed to wear that for a year and a day. Widowers were expected to wear black suits, but that wasn't much of a stretch for 18th century gentlemen because most of them would have a dark suit in their closet. They could also, after 6 months of mourning, get away with a black hatband or armband. Mourning fabrics were supposed to be matte in finish and embroidery. Lace and trims were discouraged. When a member of the royal family died, the Lord Chamberlain ordered specific types of mourning gear to be worn by the members of the court and nobility, and other people were expected to show their grief with black armbands and hatbands and plain white collars and cuffs. And depending on your importance, the mourning lasted for a certain period, from weeks to months, and then you're expected to go back to regular wear with or without trim that denoted mourning. And again, this is all based on who was this important person who died, what relationship were they to you, and how much you could afford to pay for mourning. Most people could not afford to rush out and buy all black wardrobes. And since you did not have ready to wear as an industry in the 18th century, most people had their clothes made for them or made them themselves. So if there was a death in the family, the women would often end up taking a dress, dyeing it black, or ripping off the trim and embroidery to make it look more somber. Mourning marked its wearers as special. It was meant to discourage uncomfortable situations or questions. It also allowed survivors of period to indulge their grief. It was a public sign that, hey, this person has lost someone important to them. Honor that. Don't do anything stupid or embarrassing that's going to make them cry again. And in a way, compare this to today, and I see this with my students. Grandma dies on a Monday. The memorial service and the burial is going to be on Friday. Well, guess what? They're expected to be back in class, or you're expected to be back at work the following Monday. In the 18th century, they would have been like, no, that's not acceptable. And even though it was a very hard age in a lot of ways, at least they understood that mourning is a process that can take months or possibly even years. Now, I want to talk a little bit about literature. How much time do I have? I just want to make sure.
5 more minutes.
5 more minutes, okay. I'm going to jump to Clarissa. And the reason why I want to talk about Clarissa and death is because it ties in with ideas about justice and the afterlife. To make a very long story short, Clarissa is like the perfect upper-class 18th century young lady. Her family is pressuring her to marry this odious old man, and they're doing it because her brother is jealous of her and a special inheritance she's getting. She ends up corresponding with a young aristocrat named Lovelace. Lovelace, manages to get her to run away with him. It's very ambiguous. Under his very sympathetic exterior, he's actually a high-functioning sociopath. And he eventually arranges things and kind of creates this alternative world where a brothel is a safe place to stay. Prostitutes are actually his wealthy, respectable female relatives. He ends up drugging Clarissa and raping her. And she has a breakdown, she recovers, she escapes from him, and basically she wills herself to die. And this was a problem for Samuel Richardson because he was a devout Christian. On the one hand, he couldn't make it obvious that Clarissa was committing suicide, but he was indicating that somehow she was wasting away. And instead of being upset about it, she actually sees her upcoming death as a good thing. And it's a good thing to her because she does not believe or see that she can get justice in her time. She's terrified of having to retell the story of the rape to people in public. She is also legally a minor, and she can only present a case of rape if she has an adult friend or relative who will agree to go with her. Also, there are circumstances involved where Lovelace only has to bring the right kind of witnesses, and they can be like, hey, he passed you off, he said you were his wife in public. Marital rape doesn't exist in the 18th century. You seem to be on good terms with him at this public encounter. basically they could have blown her story apart. And so she chooses to look forward to death, and Richardson brings up the idea of poetic justice. Because when his readers realize this is how the story's going to end, it's not going to end happily. Lovelace is not going to reform. He is not going to ask Clarissa's hand in marriage. They're not going to have a happy ending. People were upset. They're like, please don't do this. And he's like, no, I have to do this. Clarissa is going to die, but there will be justice. And the justice that he thought of was a Christian variation on poetic justice. The idea that it might look like the wicked are getting away with their crimes in this life, but the reality is they're going to suffer for it in the next. It might look like Clarissa is a silly girl, a pitiful victim, a person who made bad choices, but she will enjoy, eternal bliss. And to wrap things up, there's kind of a problem with this frame set. And we can think about what's happened recently with the Vanderbilt rape trial. And we can think about how, unlike Clarissa, the young woman who brought the case to court, she wanted and she was fortunate to get justice in this life, at least with the first two people convicted. It is very hard to get a rape conviction in this country. During the 18th century, the Bailey Online, which shows all the records for prosecutions and criminal cases, about 5% of men who were charged with rape were convicted of it. And the FBI and Department of Justice shows that that number is even lower today in 21st century United States. Yeah, we don't have time. I can talk to you about that afterwards. But basically, I think that what we need to do as people who aren't relying on, Christian poetic justice or what will happen in the afterlife is to think about what can we do in this life to make justice possible. What can we do to change our culture, to change ideas about consent, autonomy, sex, in order to let more people feel like when something is wrong, there will be justice. I don't have to wait for invisible God justice when I die. There will be justice here on earth. And I think that that is something that I would urge us to work towards. It's difficult and it will not happen immediately in our lifetimes, but the groundwork is being laid and is being worked on. And especially for young people, you are the people who are going to take it forward. And we really need you to do that. Because people like Clarissa should not have had to feel like they only had God to rely on for justice in this world. That's the 18th century in death.
Thank you, Professor Phillips. As I was preparing my host stuff for today, I was thinking about this moment of quiet that we have in the middle of our service. At the Reader's Smoop a week ago Wednesday, we talked about whether we should have it at all, what is it doing in our service. Then a few days later, I got an email message from Franco. He was listing the songs that were going to be played, and he referred to the moment of reflection, which is how it had been called in the last couple of programs, but I hadn't noticed. And reading that from Franco was a small epiphany for me. We're not having that moment of silence thing that was just an attempt back in the 70s to sneak prayer back into the schools. We're having a moment, a minute of reflection. We've had a half hour of listening to great songs, lovely poems, a fascinating talk. And now we can have a minute in the middle to take a breath, listen to the quiet around us, to the nothing in the room that is also another something, and then we'll have another half hour of music and talk. Thank you. Now, please welcome Adam back to the piano, and Jen Malenke singing No One Is Alone from Into the Woods.
No one here to guide you. Now you're on your own. Only me beside you. Still you're not alone. No one is alone. Truly, no one is alone. Sometimes people leave you halfway through the wood. Others may deceive you. You decide what's good. You decide alone. But no one is alone. People make mistakes. Fathers, mothers, people make mistakes. Holding to their own, thinking they're alone. Honor their mistakes. Everybody makes one another's terrible mistakes. Witches can be right, giants can be good. You decide what's right, you decide what's good. Just remember, someone is on your side, someone else is not. While you're seeing your side, maybe you forgot they are not alone. No one is alone. Hard to see the light now. Just don't let it go. Things will come out right now. We can make it so. Someone is on your side. No one is alone.
Jen came all the way from New York to sing that for us. In the Sunday Assembly website, the big international worldwide website, you can see that the services have a fair amount of flexibility. But part of each of them is a segment that's usually called Trying My Best, in which a member of our group tells a personal story, funny, poignant, serious, all of the above, that shows that person negotiating life, failing, succeeding, trying not to screw up too badly. So today, please welcome Sean Spradlin for Trying My Best.
Before I begin, I would like to point out that in case of a mass exodus, there are 2 exits here, and we'll be good. So mind your elders, any pregnant ladies, help them reach their exit. So to begin, I'm from the deep, deep south, like beyond I-65. Like I-65 empties into the water at this part. I'm from Mobile, Alabama. So I've been surrounded by churches my whole life. Big churches, small churches, mega churches, progressive churches, conservative churches, Baptist churches, Methodist churches, black churches, white churches, loud churches, and there's a church for just about everyone. Well, except for me. Since I became an atheist, the accusatory questions asked me the most are, how do you get your morality? Without the Bible, there is no morality. And what do you do with your unclean women? I give them chocolates and ask for forgiveness. That's the extent of what I can do. The other question is, what happens after you die? Is that it? You just disappear? Well, no, actually, you're in a pressurized coffin, and the gases inside your body will begin to expand, and you explode. It's pretty awesome. So, they have documentaries. Check it out. Science is cool. So the answers to me are simple enough. Of course I'm an upstanding person. I pay my bills. I don't drink, and I don't when I'm driving, at least. I've never done drugs. I'm not that much of a sexual deviant. You know, not too bad, anyway. I haven't killed anyone yet. That's a plus. So far, I'm going to ride that one for a little while longer. By most metrics, I'm a nice, boring person. I do very little to upset the standard taboos. But that's not morality, not really, not in the truest sense. That's just good behavior. Well, the killing people part's, you know, that's a good thing. Don't do that. That's usually bad, unless it's like Hitler or something like that, then by all means. But morality is a compass. It's something that gives clarity to our actions. It's automatic. It's an example to follow. It's the right thing to do. Excuse the air quotes. It's just a habit. When I think of examples to follow, I'm often thinking of my grandfather, and it's as corny as it sounds, let me tell you what he was like. He married my grandmother when she already had 4 children from a previous marriage, one of those children being my mother. When my grandmother was expecting a set of twins, he told her to carry the name of her previous husband so that the new children would feel like family with their siblings. But he only ever referred to my mother as his daughter, and he only referred to me as his grandson. Until middle school, I had no idea he wasn't my biological grandfather. I spent most of my time in my grandparents' care, and naturally I copied their mannerisms. I wanted the same doctor-prescribed Velcro shoes. I pretended to drink coffee. I acted like I knew how to spell so that I could appreciate Wheel of Fortune on the same level that they did. I thought tweed was fashionable. But I never felt quite as smart or as accomplished in my life as the time that I helped my grandfather set the VCR to record The Young and the Restless for my grandmother while she's away at work. When I found out that he was technically my step-grandfather, it was the biggest so-what feeling I ever had in my life. I only never knew him to be my grandpa, so what difference did it make? I was just like, well, that's okay, that's an interesting factoid I will now live, now that I know that I'm not going to live to the ripe age of 90, and my actual grandfather had a proclivity towards schizophrenia and, you know, died at 40. Oh, okay. Bad luck there. The last time I saw him, though, he was being wheeled into the operating room, and I was at my mother's side. He reached up and grabbed her arm and asked, "Is your mother okay? Are you okay? Is Sean okay?" When she replied, "Yes, everyone is doing fine," he let go, and I remember seeing an expression of relief wash over his face. He had little concern that his own life was ending, and just wanted to know that everyone that he cared and loved for was just going to be okay after he was gone. I hope that one day I get to meet my end in the same manner, but today I have 2 young nephews about the same age that I was when I was with them. They seem to think the world of me, and naturally I don't know how to respond to this unquestioning admiration. I have no manual on how to interact with small children. What exactly are you supposed to do when a 7-year-old corners you and struggles to articulate his deep and profound love for Minecraft and LEGO Star Wars with you? Automatically, I don't want to hear it. Part of me just wishes he just find something else to do so I can go back to scrolling through my phone and being disgusted with everybody on Facebook. But then I think back to the times that I was a boy and I could spend an entire afternoon talking about Mario and Ghostbusters and Ninja Turtles. My grandfather would muster up some color commentary to satisfy me, and I think, finally, It's a grown-up who gets it, and we would go back to watching He-Man reruns on the cartoons. Now remember those as a good time, so I think that for their sake, maybe I should just pretend to be impressed with Skylanders. After all, how many hours have I wasted on YouTube to say I honestly don't have time for Pee Wee football? I don't believe in an afterlife. There's no reincarnation, no spirits, and one day I will also be gone, as well as my nephews, as well as their sons and their sons after them. In a few short centuries, most of us will entirely be forgotten beyond some obscure historical record to quantify our existence. I'm sorry for the downer note there, but it's kind of true. And yet I believe my grandfather continues to exist to this day. My nephews will not really know his face or his voice. They won't know that he smelled like Old Spice and wore the same #1 dad hat that when he fed the birds every day. But they will know the feeling that I had, knowing that I had an unconditional friend and I can share all of my life experiences with them. One day they will have their own 7-year-old nephews, and naturally they won't know what to do with them either. It is my hope that one day, maybe they'll think back to the times that I spent with them and my attempts of imitating virtue, and in turn they will imitate me, and maybe my spirit will live on through them, as well as my grandfather, as well as the men that cared for him before him. So to answer the second question, what happens after you die? Well, I think we are a very gradual step for the next generation. We give them examples of virtue for them to improve upon, whether we fake it or not. Our lives are to honor those who precede us, so let's try not to screw this up. Thank you.
So, it is now time for the collection. We're going to get the baskets. David wants to remind everyone that the next assembly is March 22nd. Sunday assembly is totally non-profit. It's in IRS terms, I think it's 501c3. Everyone here is volunteering. So as the baskets come around, if you can put a few dollars in it, it will go to the cause of renting this space, or it'll go to the cause of doing room at the inn, and our other expenses. While they're going around, let me make some announcements. Lunch today, there will be a small group, the beta test group, will be going to Gray
Hall. Straight that way out the door.
Gray Hall, that way out the door. And eating lunch here at Scarrett Bennett for $11 a person. If you have not paid, pay Tanya, who, by the way, is also ready to take credit cards. If you would like to make a donation that way, she is right there. That will begin at 11:30. We are just going to see if Scarrett Bennett lunch works for us, and so a small group is going there. Everyone else is welcome to go to Chipotle. Many, many people are going to Chipotle because it's Chipotle. Along with this, what are my other announcements here? Part of our motto is to live better. Part of living better is meeting between these monthly services in small groups, which the original Sunday assemblers called, in a burst of creativity, smoops. If you see the word smoop, it's an English term for small group. One of the regular smoops is the Middle Ground Potluck, which will meet next Sunday at 4 p.m. The address can be found on the meetup page for Sunday Assembly Nashville. The Middle Ground is designed for those whose relationships may have changed or been affected by conflicting or significantly differing beliefs. How do we find between the godful and the godless a middle ground? There's also a smoop for readers, writers, and speakers. It will hold another meeting before the end of the month, but that hasn't been posted yet. Check Meetup. In terms of Wonder More, a group will attend the Science Cafe lecture on February 19th at 6:30 p.m. at the Adventure Science Center. Astronomy professor Thomas Weiler will talk about Einstein and time travel. On April 4th, a little less than 2 months away, at 6 p.m., a group is hosting Buzzy Jackson, who has written The Inspirational Atheist, Wise Words on the Wonder and Meaning of Life. And the following Sunday, the following afternoon, Sunday, April 5th at 4 p.m., will be the traditional godless Easter egg hunt at Shelby Park. In terms of helping often, we are serving at Room in the Inn on Saturday, February 21st. We need people to cook in advance of that time and people to serve, or do we have this? Okay, Marina, right here in the front, is organizing this. And the following day, following closely on the heels of Room of the Inn, is our monthly brunch potluck at 9 a.m. at the Berry Hill Community Center in Berry Hill. It's the ideal weekend. We feed others on Saturday and we feed each other on Sunday. And finally, a little bit farther down the road, the end of May is the Sunday Assembly World Conference, which will be held just down the road in Atlanta. And it would be good if we could organize a party to go to that. So, did I miss anything?
No, I think
We're
you're
good. Okay. We've been talking about death. I'd like to tell you just a little story, and then we'll have a couple songs. The young people have a couple songs. So I'm going to tell you a little story about when I was young. When I was 16, the local PBS channel in Boston, Boston's WGBH, started showing great old movies, foreign movies and classics at 11 p.m. And my parents, being good liberals, let me stay up late and watch them. My father was a night owl like me, and so he would sometimes wander in from the living room, where he was supposed to be correcting papers for his English classes, but wasn't usually. And he would wander in and watch some of the movies with me. One night the movie was The Seventh Seal, which is Ingmar Bergman's movie that takes place after the Crusades, during the plague. You've probably all seen pictures from it because it's been parodied a lot. A knight, who's our hero, plays a chess match with death. The knight and his squire are traveling through Sweden, returning to his wife and castle, and intermittently throughout the movie, death shows up and they reset up the chess pieces and keep playing the game. Now is the spoiler alert. The knight loses the game. When this happened, when I saw it when I was 16, I said, "Death won!" And my father said, "Yes, death always wins." I thought of myself as a sophisticated, foreign film-watching, super-intellectual 16-year-old. I was so innocent. I had believed that Hollywood, or that any movie, wouldn't let death win. 5 years earlier than that, when I was 11, I'd stopped believing in God or gods. I was a rationalist, but I still expected that death wouldn't win. I still needed this comfortable, unrealistic, and selfish happy ending. It's selfish because we need death. Without death, we can't afford any new life. It's only our dying. Yours, 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 and mine. Even Steve's. It's only our dying that permits the world to continue. But it's infuriating that life is so short, and that the world will continue and progress without us. There will be brilliant inventions and incredible changes in human life, and we'll never see them. It makes me so angry all the time. But it's so necessary. Each of us has to lose to death so that we can together defeat death, or at least fight death to a draw. We defeat death by having children. We defeat death with our memories, with our writing, with our paintings, our movies, our videos, our photographs, our recordings of ourselves, our recording of each other, our good works. The universe itself will eventually die. It will dwindle and fold down into entropy, room temperature, where everything is the same, bland. Everything will be Walmart, in other words. This process is inevitable. But Buckminster Fuller said that human creativity was the impulse against entropy. Performing the creative work the universe needs to continue is our own small battle against death. As I was writing this yesterday, from the window of my study, I can see the garden in the backyard, my beautiful bride's garden. Right now, it is a wasteland of toppled plants and rotten leaves and stems. But in the spring, it will show green, and by August, okra and habaneros and tomatoes will flourish, each of them flourishing, never realizing that they too will die. All of these plants will be in glorious celebration, orange habaneros and red tomatoes, and then they'll die to fertilize the ground for others. Melissa and I live in that house under the same illusion that all homeowners live. We think, we own this land. I bought this house. I'm paying the mortgage. It's mine. Yeah, the Oprah thinks it owns the land too. But we're not buying. We don't own. Each of us, no matter what, is just renting a small space for a brief time. As Blanche Dubois says at the end of Streetcar Named Desire, don't get up, I'm only passing through. Let's hear some songs.
I can almost see it, that dream I'm dreaming, but there's a voice inside my head saying you'll never reach it. Every step I'm taking, every move I make feels lost with no direction. My faith is shaking, but I gotta keep trying. I gotta keep my head held high. There's always gonna be another mountain. I'm always gonna wanna make it. There's struggles I'm facing, there are chances I'm
got one more song for you guys. The girls are going to sing, well, this is going to be an awesome one. So everybody needs to stand up and sing along with them. And then we're done after this. So hope to see you all at lunch in one of the two places. Yeah, hold on 1 second. Let me take a second real quick to announce everybody who had a chance to participate in this music thing, because it was a big venture. We had a lot of, if you're involved in the music this time, come up to the stage real quickly so I can introduce y'all. Franco including. So guys, Mr. Franco Hasaguchi, if he's not playing saxophone or bullrun or anything, he's doing our sound. So big hand for Franco. Stephen Phillips on guitar and vocals and instrument and making it all work. Greg Poggin was singing with me for the first time today. Give a hand to Greg. Scott was huge in coming through with the drums. Thank you, Scott Tavickman. Appreciate it always. We've got Nate Burns, guitar, picking out the songs. Alex DeFazio, piano. Ben Stuckey in the back playing bass and that keyboard thing. Then we got Bill, the rock star Campbell on guitar. Olivia DeFazio on ukulele and violin. That was awesome. Sophia Campbell, beautiful singing. Kristen DeCampbell, she played the cups. Awesome. We got Emily Burns, holy smokes, singing vocals. We've got Katie Burns singing vocals and harmony. Miss Jen Malanky singing. Ray Dennison in the back. Man, this was awesome. Thank you guys all for coming. Appreciate it very much.
And Adam Newton right here. Adam Newton, go to Brad, the leader of the band.